Hello, I would like to thank you for watching my video presentation on what a student might do and what a teacher should do. Before we get started, I would like to share with you a little about myself and about this project. My name is Justin Hunsberger and I am studying mid-level education at the University of Central Arkansas. It is spring of 2016 and this video is the final part of a semester-long project in classroom management 4305. Now I would like to tell you more about this project. As I said before, this video is the culmination of a semester-long assignment. The project was broken down into 4 steps. What you see on the screen is a brief overview of those 4 steps, but I will discuss each in greater detail throughout the presentation. When step 1 started, we were given a list of behavior issues and asked to choose one. Students then had to elaborate on that situation and create a dilemma that could occur in the classroom. We needed to describe in detail the situation and what information the teacher had access to. Here is the classroom scenario that I developed. At the start of your lesson on Friday, David, a student with average grades and no history of behavior problems, stands up and asks, "Why do we have to learn this?" You explain the importance of this lesson and how it is relevant to the world, and David quickly sits down. Throughout your lesson, David makes audible noises that disrupt class, such as loud huffs and long moans while stretching. You notice other students chuckling at David's actions, and this seems to encourage him to disrupt the class more. David stops this behavior after each time you call his name, but then he starts back again minutes later. Denise, a student that works hard but often struggles with her grades, asks you a question about the material. Before you can answer, David shouts out, "Damn, Denise, are you effing stupid or what? You ask all these dumb questions." Denise's face turns red with anger as half the students in the class laugh and the other half stare at you with their mouths hanging open. You tell David to go to the office and he says, "I don't have to." Now all of the students are looking at you for a response. In step 2 of this project, I needed to write what I thought a classroom manager would effectively do to respond to this situation and what a classroom manager should avoid doing in response to this issue. I also had to give reasons why I felt each of those responses was effective or ineffective. For my effective response, I answered, "I believe it would be effective to say to David, 'That's right, David, you do not have to report to the office. You have a choice to make, and you will face the consequences for that decision.' I felt this response was effective because it shows the other students that disrespect in the classroom will earn a consequence. It allows the teacher to move forward with the lesson instead of escalating the situation, and it presents an opportunity for David to demonstrate integrity and take personal responsibility for his actions by choosing to report to the office as directed. I felt that in the face of increased consequences, David would de-escalate the situation. For my ineffective response, I answered that it would not be effective to escalate the situation with David by getting angry, yelling, or challenging David. This would model poor behavior by giving in to an emotional response. The class and lesson would be disrupted by a continuing argument, and the attention David would receive from his peers makes it more likely that he would continue and increase his defiance. After crafting and justifying my responses, it was time to turn to the experts. In step 3 of this project, I had to send my dilemma that I discussed out to practicing teachers to see how they would respond. In class, we discussed several ways to handle this, and I decided on using Google Forms. The first effective response I received back said to explain to David that this was my classroom and he did not have a choice. If he still failed to leave, then I needed to contact an administrator or a school resource officer and have him removed from the class. Several of the other responses echoed this sentiment by identifying how important it was to get a principal or resource officer involved. One of the respondents did take a stance that was closer to my initial response. That teacher suggested avoiding any more verbal confrontations with David, but instead used proximity to try to discourage his disruptions. If the other students in the class were able to remain engaged in learning, then that teacher would allow David to stay. If David's behavior caused a disruption to the learning of other students, then that teacher too would have David removed from the class. Contacting David's parents or guardians to discuss the issue was also a common response that many of the teachers shared. I agree with that but failed to mention it. One teacher also suggested that it was necessary to contact Denise's parents or guardians after the event. The teacher suggested it was necessary to let Denise and her parents or guardians know that Denise is a valued and respected part of the class and that David's disruptions and offensive behavior would not be tolerated. Like the effective responses, there were many similarities between the ineffective responses. The teachers explained how I should not lose my cool and yell at David because this would further disrupt my class. It would also be ineffective to physically remove David as that could escalate the situation to physical violence. It was also stressed that I should not turn this into a battle of wills with David or treat it as a situation in which I must be the winner. Part of step 4 is reflecting on those responses, recalling my responses, and analyzing what that means for my classroom management style going forward. I believe that expectations and consequences are two tools in my arsenal for combating misbehavior in the classroom. The students need to have a clear understanding of what is and what is not acceptable behavior, and they also must know that I will follow through with the consequences I outline. An area that I feel I need to examine is providing the right level of response and knowing when to escalate the consequences. The majority of teachers indicated that they would call an administrator or resource officer to have David removed from the class. They all responded at a much higher level than I did. I believe this ties into with my need to understand and utilize all the available resources within the school. I also need to remember that David wasn't the only student involved in this disruption. It is important to consider Denise in this situation and contact her parents or guardians as well. I believe that a caring professional call to Denise's home would be a proactive approach that could ease some of the concerns that they may have. Step 4 of this project also required us to examine different educational theorists and identify a theory that aligns with our classroom dilemma. I chose Lee and Marlene Carter because I feel their assertive discipline theory was at the root of many of the effective responses I received. The assertive discipline theory states that teachers have a responsibility to assertively lead their class and ensure that it provides a safe and orderly learning environment for all. I believe this is reflective of the need to remove David from the classroom in response to his behavior. His disruptions prevented the class from being orderly, and it also prevented Denise and other students from feeling safe when they had questions. This assertive discipline relies on an understanding of expectations and consequences in the classroom and acknowledging that both students and teachers have rights in the classroom. Students have the right to know how they are expected to behave in the classroom. It is not appropriate for the teacher to hold students to an expectation without ever outlining it. Students have the right to have the teacher give instructions on how to meet those expectations. Students need to be given the tools to meet the standards. Students have the right to receive recognition and positive consequences when they do exceptional work. Consequences do not always have to be negative. Students have the right to have limits set on their behavior. Teachers also have rights in the classroom. Teachers have the right to establish and maintain an orderly classroom by utilizing their strengths as managers. Teachers must be aware of their strengths and weaknesses and use that to their advantage. Teachers have the right to hold students to a set of expectations designed to help students grow personally and academically. Holding the students to these expectations not only helps the individual student, but also ensures other students can learn and develop free of disruptions. Teachers also have the right to support from parents and administrators. I believe this is key in helping resolve the situation with David. It is necessary to have administrative support to return the classroom to its safe state, and it is important to have support of the parents to find out why David had such a sudden change in behavior. This could indicate that something else is going on in David's life.